everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. It is such a pleasure to be seeing all the wonderful faces today. And welcome to this gathering of the NeuroSemantics community from all over the world. Now, I'm Mazuki. I'm a NeuroSemantics trainer and meta coach, and I represent Malaysia in the ISNS leadership team. This is the ISNS NeuroSemantics Wisdoms meeting. So let me just put the screen on for you. There we go. So that's the topic of the discussion for today. The purpose of this NeuroSemantics Wisdoms meeting is to have a stronger connection between our international society, the NeuroSemantics Institutes, and members. And one of the things that I really look forward to when we have these meetings is to be able to see everyone's faces, especially those far away that we can hardly meet. And by the wonders of technology, we are meeting here today. It is, and this meeting is also a platform for us to refresh our knowledge of neurosemantics. Let me just admit some people coming in as well. Right. It is also for us to be able to meet one another and to collaborate, hopefully personally or through our businesses. Now, I really appreciate your presence, and to start off with, I would like to honor your presence today by greeting each and every one of you through the National Institute. So I'd like to invite you to unmute your mic so that we can honor everyone by loudly greeting in your national language as I introduce the Institute. So are you ready? Unmute your mic. Yeah, I can hear that. So let's begin with the Institute of Neurosemantics, Africa. Let's give Africa a big hand. Hello. Wait. Next is NeuroSemantics of Australia. Let's give them a big hand. We need to give them a really big shake as well, because they are all, some of them are already in tomorrow. Okay. Next is the Institute of NeuroSemantics Brazil. Welcome, Brazil.
Hi, bom dia.
Yes.
Gia.
And next is the Institute of NeuroSemantics Egypt, Middle East, and North Africa. Let's give them a big hand.
Marhaba.
Next is the Institute of Neurosemantics Europe and Scandinavia. Let's give them a big hand.
Hello, hello.
And next is the Institute of Neurosemantics Hong Kong and China. Let's give them a loud welcome, because they are in another room.
Hello, 你好.
Yeah, you have a few here.
你好吗? Hello.
Yes, I love hearing that. They are, most of them are in another room where the meeting is being translated into Mandarin. Next is the Institute of Neurosemantics Indonesia. Indonesia, selamat datang.
Selamat malam.
And next is the Institute of Neurosemantics Latin America and Mexico.
Hola.
Mexico.
Yeah, good morning. Buenos días.
Hola.
Hola. Next is the Institute of Neurosemantics Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore. Selamat datang.
Hello.
Gandang gabi.
Come on, Geraldine. I didn't hear the greeting in Tagalog.
Magandang gabi. Good evening.
Magandang gabi.
Next is the Institute of Neurosemantics US of A. Let's give them a round of applause. Welcome. Yay. Welcome, everyone. So it is a pleasure and honor for me to be introducing this meeting. Just a quick rundown on the meeting agenda. This meeting is scheduled for about 90 minutes. So Michael will be presenting for about 45 minutes or so on the topic, a deep dive into responsibility. Then we'll have two discussions, and each discussion will be about 10 to 12 minutes each. So we'll be breaking out into small rooms for about 10 to 12 minutes, coming back into the main room for about 5 minutes, and then the second discussion. Once we have done that, then we'll be closing with some announcements about NeuroSemantics trainings in the world. So I'd like to remind you to please be here for the presentation and the discussions in order to get the maximum value from the meeting, because it is through the discussions that you are integrating what Michael will be presenting, and when you bring it out, then you are consolidating the presentation that Michael will be doing in a short while. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Hall to present Deep Dive into Responsibility. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Marzuki. The deep dive will be explained as we get into this subject, and why a deep dive is one of our themes in neurosemantics. It contrasts with a superficial view of something. So our very first slide, next slide actually, what does it mean to feel responsible? So you know about responsibility. We talk about it when we introduce NLP and neurosemantics, and there at the bottom of the screen, the ability to respond. And isn't that what we all want? More of the ability to respond as we so choose to respond. So this responsibility is not an emotion. So how could you feel it? When we think about emotions, there's about 12 basic emotions that correspond to the body. And if you ask, where do you feel relaxed? Where do you feel joy? Where do you feel love? Where do you feel fear or anger? You can probably point somewhere in your body where you're experiencing that feeling. So if we ask this question, what does it mean to feel responsible? Isn't that what we want? We want ourselves and other people to feel responsible, whatever their responsibility is. It's a concept, it's understandings and beliefs, and that's why we have to make a deep dive into it. Let me start off by making a few statements about what I feel responsible for. I feel responsible for my health and my well-being. I feel responsible for my fitness and my energy level. I feel responsible for researching and writing to keep expanding and deepening neurosemantics. I do not feel responsible for the war in Palestine. I don't feel responsible for that. I don't feel responsible for the bad reputation that the founders of NLP created that we're now trying to undo. But I do feel responsible for helping to create a more positive branding and reputation for NLP today. I feel responsible. So when I think about feeling responsible, or what feeling responsible means to another person, what happens to someone when they feel responsible? Well, actually, if it's a healthy responsibility, a lot of good things happen. First of all, you get engaged. You become proactive. You develop a action bias and have a sense that I can do something about that. You then focus on becoming productive, effective, efficient. You become more of a mover and shaker in your own world. You become a change agent. So a lot of good things happen when you begin to feel responsible for whatever your responsibility is. And ask any leader, that's what they want their followers to be, to feel responsible for the company, the group, the organization. Ask any parent. Isn't that what we want our children to do? To grow up and feel like they're responsible persons. What does a coach do? Well, a coach helps people to feel responsible for the goals and the objectives that they set. So with trainers, so with therapists, helping people to feel responsible. Our next slide takes us to more of the definition of responsibility. And here we have the 4 areas of responsibility. Ability to respond mentally. And so to do your own thinking, to be response able to create great ideas, empowering beliefs, to manage your meanings, your imaginations, all that's your mental responsibility. Nobody else is able to respond mentally for you. You have to do your own thinking. The ability to respond emotionally. We call that emotional mastery, emotional intelligence, to feel and experience the positive and the negative emotions in such a way that they put you into the kind of states that's going to support whatever you're doing. The ability to respond verbally and linguistically. And when it comes to your linguistic abilities, the ability to use your voice, you can do so many things with words. You can bless, you can curse. You can ask questions and explore. You can make yourself known. So many things with that ability. And then finally, the ability to behaviorally use your actions to make a difference in your life and the life of others. So that's what we mean by responsibility. And the next slide is a quotation from Frankl that you probably have heard that is such a powerful quotation. We who lived in the concentration camps, he said, can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken away from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose your own way. Talk about a responsibility. This is human power at its best. That even in circumstances like a concentration camp, you're not a victim. This is true empowerment. You can always choose your own way if you feel responsible. So our next slide. So the next slide there. So your response power, your response ability creates this ability to live life on your own terms. And that's one of the reasons I'm using this as our ISNS wisdom this month, to encourage and empower this ability to live life on your own terms. So the question now becomes, what does that feel like? And in neurosemantics, the short answer is this. Once you feel responsible, you feel, I can do it. It feels like being in control of yourself. So self-control, being in charge of your own self. You have that locus of control. We may say self-referencing. And now it is this ability to live life on your own terms. So the sense of responsibility is our next slide. Sense of responsibility. Here's the challenge to understand what this means. It's not an emotion, at least not an immediate primary emotion. It's more of a sense of capacity, of power, of being a non-victim, that you can always do something. It's not merely a state, certainly involves a state, but it's a rich state and a complex state. And so we're going to look at the depths of that state as we go into it. And also, it's not exactly a strategy. It's not something that you strategically set out and plan in a conscious way. It is really an experience that you have in who you are and your being. So the next slide, asking what is this thing that we call responsibility? Obviously, this is where we start in neurosemantics when we introduce meta states and the power zone. And we are starting from this ability to access our most basic human powers. The diagram we use is the next slide, the power zone. And this is the zone of influence. And everybody has this, but everybody doesn't know they have it. You have to develop it. For most people, it's unconscious. And people who think and feel that they're victims, they have this. They're using it to build up the state, the belief, the attitude of victimhood. So our next slide starts to sort this out. And the last bullet point on this sheet says that to feel your power zone is going to require at least 3 levels. First of all, you have to be aware, I've got these responses. These are in my domain. They're in the locus of control that I have. And then to accept them. And for some people, that's going to be the challenge, to accept that everything I think is my responsibility. Everything I feel is my responsibility. I'm responsible for what I feel. I can't blame and accuse anyone else of making me feel whatever it is that I'm feeling. So that acceptance of that power and acceptance of the words you use, the self-talk that you engage in, the things that you verbally, linguistically say to yourself and others. And then once you have that acceptance of these powers, then to own them. And that's the next step, to really own them as mine. And these 3 at least get us to the place where we own this power zone and are beginning to feel responsible. But the next slide will take us into why this is not sufficient. We're going to see, and this is the deep dive into responsibility, that there's going to be a number of other metastates or frames that we're going to have to set in order to really create this sense of feeling responsible. And so it's not an easy metastate to elicit or create, which is probably why a lot of people do not feel responsible. They may know that they're responsible, but they don't feel that responsibility. Before we get to the steps, let me talk about why this is so important. So our next slide is a quotation from Abraham Maslow. The person in peak experience feels himself to be responsible, active, creative center of his activities and his perceptions. He is now most free from blocks, inhibition, cautions, fears, doubts, controls, reservations, self-criticism. So it creates a freedom from all of those things that block and that stop us feeling responsible. He is more spontaneous, more expressive, more innocently behaving, more natural. He is more creative. So if you want to know why this is important, here's a whole set of values to feel yourself responsible as an active, creative center of your own activities. The quotation continues on the next slide. Your first responsibility is to be yourself honestly and fully. So being fully human, that's not easy, but it's our first responsibility. This little formula condenses many other formulas as well as encompasses the concept of self-actualization. So self-actualization, feeling responsible for yourself, for being yourself fully and honestly, these are synonyms. These are ways of getting to the same thing, of actualizing your highest values and beliefs into your best performances. What this amounts to is the acceptance of reality, the principles of reality, and acting upon reality. So even if I'm born a paraplegic, I can still be an agent rather than a pawn. Now, that's a quotation from Abraham Maslow. Even if I'm born a paraplegic, I can still be an agent. So here's a question. Do you consider yourself an agent of responsibility, an agent of change, an agent of thinking, of feeling, of speaking, of doing, feeling like yourself, that you're an agent in life? And so that's what we're going after, that your own of your life. One more quotation, one more slide that continues this quotation. Abraham Maslow says, looking within yourself for many of the answers implies taking responsibility. This in itself is a great step toward actualization. In psychotherapy, you can see it, you can feel it, you can know the moment of responsibility. This is one of the great steps. Every time you take responsibility, this is the actualizing of the self. So the next slide, we come to a summary. And just imagine, every time you take responsibility, you're actualizing yourself. When you feel yourself an agent, you're feeling yourself responsible. So you're using your executive powers in the prefrontal cortex of your mind to become the CEO of you. And all of this happens from the process of looking within yourself for answers. And isn't that what we're trying to do in training, in coaching, consulting, therapy? Isn't that what parents are trying to do? Helping people to look within for answers. So now the question becomes, how do we build up this meta feeling, because it's not a primary feeling, this meta feeling of feeling responsible for your activities. So step number one, next slide. We're going to start with the power zone process. Access your response powers. And this slide here is a summary of the power zone that we do in meta stating. Think of something small and simple that you can do. And when you do, bring awareness to it. Notice your powers of thinking, feeling, speaking, and acting. And as you bring all your attention to that, accepting that and owning that, that is the beginning. This is step one. We've got 10 more steps, 9 more steps, but this is step one. So once you've done the power zone, you're not done if you want to feel responsible. So step two is the next slide. It's now time to develop those powers. So take each one of those, your mental powers, your thinking powers, your emoting powers, and develop that power. That is, treat it like a skill. If it's a skill, then it can be benchmarked. How about that? If it's a skill, if it's something you do, then it can be expressed, and that expression can be made real and measured. So cultivate it, expand it. This will develop your capacity to respond in more and more situations, increasing your repertoire of how you can do something with whatever is happening. So the more you develop, assume responsibility, the more you build up the possibility of feeling responsible. We're still not there to that place of feeling responsible. This is just step two, developing those powers. Oftentimes in coaching, when we ask someone, what do you want? The next question is, do you know what you have to do to get what you want? And the question after that is, do you have the skill? Or do you need to develop skill? So this is the process on the way to feeling like the executive of your own life. Our next slide is step number 3. Set the frame. It needs to be done. It needs to be done. If something is needed, that implies there's a reason why we need to do that. So give yourself a reason. It needs to be done. Pick something in your own life that you want to feel more responsibility for. For me, it's writing a paper, or writing a book, or writing a chapter. And my third step, once I know that I've got these response powers and I've developed these response powers, is I need to say it needs to be done. And the more reasons I give myself for doing it, the more it'll seem reasonable and rational. And the more reasons I have, the more motivation will come. It needs to be done. So what needs to be done? The fourth step is to own it. So you own it when you say, it's mine to do. It's mine to do. This begins to generate the feeling of responsibility. So now we've got the power, ownership and acceptance of these powers. We've got the development of those powers. We've got a frame that says it needs to be done. And now you're adding on to that. And this is how we go deeper and deeper into the process. We're going to add on ownership. It's mine to do. And so this is just the beginning. Now, whatever that thing is in your realm of responding. You could default. So our third bullet point on this page, yes, it's mine to do, but I don't want to do it. Why do I have to do it? So you can see that just accessing the power zone, just developing your powers, knowing that something needs to be done is not enough. It's not sufficient. You could default. How many people default? Yeah, I know it's my health is mine to do, but I don't want to do it. I'm tired. I don't have the time. So we make excuses. So this third bullet point is how so many people avoid the full expression of, I feel responsible. So when you say it's mine to do, now you're implying that I'm responsible for these expressions, these responses that come out. So now we're making that distinction. I'm responsible for these things. So we're getting closer to feeling responsible. Step 5. Step 5 is setting in your intention. I will do it. So now it's not only mine to do, I own it, but my intention is I will do it. So we've got capacity, we've got ownership, and now feeling responsible becomes intentional. It becomes a choice. It becomes your choice as you invest yourself into whatever that is. So I feel responsible for research and writing to expand and deepen neurosemantics. And so my intention is, I set out my intention. Usually I state what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be writing this or that, or developing this or that. And so it's intentional. And once you own it for yourself and then set your intention, now motivation is no longer a problem, because motivation comes from knowing why you're doing it and then setting your intention to do it. So now we're beginning to feel responsible if you've done those first 5 steps. But let's add step 6. And this may seem a little strange when we do step 6. Step 6 is integrating it with your integrity. Integrating it with your integrity. And to do that, you need to say this: I must do it. I should do it. Now, that is a modal operator of necessity. And when you feel that, you're going to feel an obligation. The obligation may be to another person, maybe to yourself, maybe a moral obligation. So now we're deepening this feeling of responsibility. And best of all, if you make it a self-actualization obligation. So if you remember the quotation from Abraham Maslow, a musician must make music. A poet must write. What a person is, that person, what a person must be, that person must do. So here's the self-actualization must. It is the must of integrity. So for me, I must write. I not only should write, I must write. And so as we start layering all of these things upon each other, this is the one that creates that obligation sense. And it's a positive obligation. I must write. I must use the potentials that are there, because if I don't, I won't be true to myself. That's the integrity part. If I don't do this, I won't be true to myself. So whatever you're thinking about doing, if it's something with parenting, you must do it. Otherwise, you won't have the integrity to yourself as a parent. But we're not done. Step 7. This is passion. So the must is integrity. The will is intention. And now we have passion to it. So here the self-actualization musts turns it into a passionate commitment. And now you have that sense of, I want to do it. I'm passionate to do it. I get to do it. It's my honor to do it. So the more meaning you put upon it, the more compelling it'll become. So here's where really deepening this, semantically load it up with as much meaning as you can. So for me, writing, I learn. It's one of the passions I have. I want to learn. And when I learn, I want to share. I want to spread whatever the insights or the learning is. And so I want to do it. Sometimes at Starbucks, when I'm reading, or when Geraldine and I are reading and studying, someone will come up and say, boy, you're working really hard. And I go, work? You call this work? This is fun. I would pay to do this. I want to do this. Well, step 8, time for a decision. So now step 8, I will do it. I have the intention to do it. I must do it. I want to do it. And now the decision is, I will do it. I will do it no matter what. Come hell or high waters, you can count on me doing this. I am not stoppable. I'm unstoppable. So that's the decision. That's the executive decision in which you make the decision, this shall be the direction, this shall be the orientation of my life. I will do it. Step 9. Now let's check the system. Let's check your mind-body system. Let's make sure it's ecological. And the final statement will be, it's ecological. It's good for me. It brings out my best. It enhances my life. It empowers me. It empowers my relationships. It will not only not hurt, it'll be a wonderful enrichment of health, well-being, relationships, finances, career, self-actualization. And now you're beginning to feel responsible. If you do those 9 steps, I'm going to add step 10. I don't have a slide for this one, but step 10, we're going to put on top of all of these joy. So go ahead to the next slide. And so this is what we've been doing. At the bottom, we have thought of something that needs to be done, and some responsible behaviors. And as we've gone up this level, gone deeper and deeper, I see what it needs to be done. There are reasons to do it. It's mine to do. I can do it. It's within my skill set. I must do it. I want to do it. I intend to do it. It's ecological to do. And then the very top is, I enjoy doing it. I have fun doing it. And I'll spread this enjoyment, this fun, this happiness of doing it. And when you do this, meditating, all 10 steps, then it's going to induce the sense of feeling responsible. So I said it was a complex metastate. It takes a lot of framing. Each one of these statements, I've tried to put them into personal statements. I must do it. I want to do it. I can do it. Each of these builds up the next step from the resources inside you so that eventually you'll feel responsible. And that feeling of responsibility is not a burden. It's a passion. It's a desire. It is your mission in life, feeling responsible. So I'm sure there's lots of questions, and our next slide invites you for questions.
Thank you, Michael. So let's open up for questions. You can put the questions in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand and unmute your mic and ask the question. So go ahead. Who wants to go first? So
I'll start.
go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. Yeah, I'm just curious about in the developmental stages of a person, when is this fully realized, or when does it start? Or
Well, it won't happen during childhood because there's too many higher frames. So the children can slowly understand it, accept it. Owning it becomes more difficult. Choosing it, giving reasons for it, semantically loading it.
will that work in years, or
It begins in teenage years.
I think it begins at 2 years old. I believe
Say
it
again,
begins, I believe it begins at 2 years old when a child first says no.
Well, that begins the power zone. And so the children can develop that power zone and push it all the way up to the 3 metastates of the power zone. Yeah.
Unfortunately, parents usually block that by telling the child what they should think.
Yeah. So that's where the developmental stage, you've got to take the skills and then develop the thinking skills, the emotional skills, the linguistic skills, behavioral skills, and let a child discover their own powers. And that takes years. It takes a child has to feel safe, feel loved, feel valued, and to have that experience. And then they start feeling good about responsibility. Otherwise, they end up as a teenager and they hate responsibility. And responsibility is considered a burden. And then they have fear. How many adults do we know that fear responsibility?
Most.
Earlier, I noticed Diana putting up her hand, and I Xiong as well. So, Diana, would you like to ask your question?
No, thank you. The question was about the age.
Okay, right.
When or
So over to you, Xiong.
There's a question from the Chinese group. He asked if this the sense of responsibility comes born with that, or it needs some time to develop the sense of responsibility.
So we need to separate the stages. So the children, as Jim noted, very early can begin to understand, I can respond. And parents need to give them permission to respond and not just lock them down and control them. So a child can learn to respond. And But what can they respond to? We wouldn't let a child be responsible for mowing the yard at 5 years old. 7 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old. So responsible to do what? To set the table. Maybe 5 years old, maybe 6. Don't use your best china when you're getting them to set the table at that level. So do they have the response? Do they understand? Are they in the kind of emotional state that they need to be in to do whatever, to do their homework? So there's going to be slow development. At puberty, the prefrontal cortex starts to develop, and children have abstract thinking and conceptual thinking. Now they can think, I've got reasons why I want to do this, not just because I'm told. And so every employee in any organization is told what to do. And they might do it, but when they take the next step of feeling responsible, they have I see why this is an important thing to do in my job. My job description is not just a set of commands that I mindlessly obey, but I understand, and I give myself even more reasons why I want to do these things. And so now the person is feeling more and more responsible, and they're not stepping out of and saying, I don't want to do it. So fully, the sense of feeling responsible is really an adult experience. And even young teenagers won't be able to have the full experience for a while. And that's why in coaching, a lot of times the very subject of coaching or in therapy is helping a person own their responsibility and to do it in a positive way instead of a negative way. Any adult who cannot say the words, I must do something, and feel burdened, feel constrained, hasn't learned the must of integrity. The must of integrity is a very high level framework when a person goes, I must be true to my skills, my talents, the things clamoring within that want to be expressed.
Michael, there's a question here from Tasneem. What about people who experience over-responsibility? How do they release that sense of over-responsibility and return to balance?
Well, this is where they have a cognitive error. As they develop their responses and they're developing, they may think that they can make people feel things. And of course, that's a delusion. I cannot make anybody feel anything. I can invite them. I can facilitate. I can induce. I can seduce. But I cannot make them. So it's a cognitive error to think that you're responsible for how people think. So that your expressions have got a frame of that's just wrong, and you haven't cut that responsibility to distinction. I'm responsible to someone for what I say or what I do.
Flor has raised her hand. Go ahead, Flor.
Yes, this is a question from the Spanish speakers. How can you work in creating a sense of responsibility in those companies in which there is a toxic culture? Where do you start there with the collaborators? What do you do?
Well, I would start with Viktor Frankl's opening quotation that I used in this presentation, that in any circumstance, the last of the human freedoms is your freedom to choose. So even if you're living in a toxic environment, it probably won't be as toxic as a concentration camp. It may be pretty toxic, but at least you can go home and you got some freedom. So your attitude is your ultimate responsibility. Or how about that? Your attitude is nobody is in control of your attitude unless you give them control. But then you've given it to them. instead of owned it for your own self. And so that's where it all begins. And so I would go back to steps 1 and 2 to take ownership of your responses, develop those responses, and then look at whatever you're doing in your organization, what needs to be done as part of your job requirement, and just say it needs to be done, and I'm going to do it. And even if the rest of everybody else are assholes, if you're working with a whole bunch of assholes, then at least don't be one.
Thank you, Michael.
Sometimes I think starting small is a way to help. In other words, you're in an organization that's toxic overall. You may start with just you doing that self-responsible part, and then you may offer others.
Yeah. Be the change that you want to make. Yep. Excellent.
So there's a question from Chris Halter. I find that some of my clients have a difficult time identifying what they want. Do you have any suggestions on how to help them unlock their want?
So this is where step number 2, develop your powers. Because the question is, if I don't know what I want, I really have not thought it through very much. So let me think it through. Let me think through, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? What are my threats? The old SWOT analysis. So take them through a SWOT analysis to find out. And all 4 of those categories are great categories for identifying something that you want. And step 3, it needs to be done. Find something that needs to be done. If you live on a street and there's lots of people cluttering it up with litter, and you look at that litter and say, well, it needs to be done, it needs to be cleaned up, then do it. You don't have to wait for someone to pay you for it or someone to tell you to do it. Just go do it. Same thing as what Jim just said. Start with something small. Just do whatever you can. And then step 4 is mine to do. So if you don't know what you want, then start with something and do it. This is where you can default to, but no one's told me to do it. No one's paying me to do it. It takes a lot of energy to do. And you can default like, I know it's mine to do, but I don't want to do it. So building up these layers builds up a sense of proactivity, an action bias, a sense of I'm a mover and a shaker in my world.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have Diana raising her hand. Go ahead, Diana.
Me again. So we work with teenagers for kind of SAT preparation and tests. They have to do exam by the end of the year, and they have toxic responsibility. Like, I have to pass, and I have to do that for my family. I'm the first to go to university, or I'm the one opening the way. So it's very, very toxic responsibility. And we try to work with them with the process, not with the result, but there is some higher level or frame.
Okay. Well, obviously they're in the wrong state.
Yeah.
They're not in the state of I want, I desire. I'm curious, I'm learning, I'm growing. They're not in the right state. They're still resisting and fighting it. So they haven't done step number 1, accepting their responsibilities, being aware of them, and then accepting and then owning. So if you don't have a good step 1 on that power zone, it's going to be impossible to move on.
Okay.
So you might tease them and provoke them. So we'll give it up. Don't do it. But I need to do it. No, you don't. why don't you be a garbage collector? Just, you don't need to be the first in your family. Why would you do that? Helping them to understand, here's the reason why it's important for me to do that. It's an honor for me to do that. So I would provoke them and say, you're not made out for college. You're not made out for testing. You're a wimp. You'll pop out of this thing. You're not responsible enough. You're still a baby. Go home.
They're
Here's a
gonna melt
pacifier.
down.
People
They're
need
gonna
to
melt
fight
down
from,
in front of me.
yeah, people need to fight from within. Because as long as they're trying to live their life outside in, they need to live inside out. And so sometimes you got, that's where the challenge comes in, that ruthless compassion. I'm going to tell you some truths. You're not going to like it. You're going to hate me for saying this to you, but I love you enough, and I care enough about you that I'm going to say it anyway. Call me whatever names you want to call me. So that's where the provoking and the and sometimes the teasing comes in as a useful tool.
Right.
Thank you.
So we have Ines from the Brazil group. Go ahead.
Yes, there is a question from our group, the Brazilian group. I will try to translate it. It says, being in the state of self-actualized, am I involved in a state of passion? This is one question comes. In this situation here, responsibilities are not obligations. They are spontaneous, isn't it? This is the question.
Well, this is the paradox of self-actualization, and this is the must of integrity. I must be true to myself and true to people that I'm related to, and it is an obligation. And I take my obligation as a privilege, as an honor, not merely as a pressure. And when you take it on as an honor and a privilege, then the pressure changes and transforms into motivation. It's a paradox. So the mother who stays up all night with a crying child to 2 a.m. and 4 a.m, and she's rocking the child and she's nurturing the child. If we ask her, what's motivating you? Well, I have to. Oh, it's a pressure. Well, it's a privilege. It's my child. It's out of love. It's out of that passion to be there for that child. I must do this. And this is where the must of integrity transforms the old modal operator of necessity into a higher level passion.
So Michael,
And that's where the higher level frames. I intend to, I must, I will, I'm deciding, I will do this. It brings about that transformation, so it becomes a healthy sense of responsibility, not a toxic one.
Michael, I'd like to bring one more question. This is from Leonardo Mendoza. As an organizational coach, how can you change the organizational culture so that employees feel responsibility?
Well, I would say the same thing Jim said earlier. Start with yourself and your attitude. Just do something small. If you're in leadership, if you're in management or leadership, then you've got the ability to help people see the value of what they're doing. We call that inspiration. You can inspire people to see the value of what you're doing. That's what leadership should be doing. But if leadership is not doing that, then let it come from the bottom up. Change usually comes from the bottom up anyway. It'd be great if it could come from the top down, but that doesn't happen all that often.
Right.
So start a fire inside, and and let it grow.
Okay, Michael, I'd like for us to move on to the group discussions. So if you have any more questions, we'll bring it for later. So what I'm going to do now is going to create the breakout room so that there'll be 4 or 5 people to give everyone an opportunity to be to voice the opinion and ask questions. So let me just see.
And we've got some great questions coming up, and it'll really be to your benefit to stay with this and play around with some of these questions. It'll tease your mind and hopefully challenge yourself.
These are the questions, and if you have noticed, I've already sent the questions to the inbox, so you can download the questions so that you can refer to those questions during the discussion. So question 1 is, think of an area in which you would like to be more responsible or take on more responsibility. What would that area be for you? Health practices, eating, exercising, studying, developing skills, relationship with someone, career, work-related activity, looking for new career. So what would that area be that you would like to be more responsible or take more responsibility? And the second question is, evaluate your sense of responsibility. Is it weak or strong or somewhere in between? Is it consistent, regular, or is it on and off depending on mood, circumstance, or something else? What resource do you need to feel responsible in a way that would enhance your life? So I hope that you've already downloaded the document that I sent you, the questions. So I'm setting up the rooms right now, and I would like that you have your discussions. Oh, by the way, when you get into your rooms, do introduce yourself to the people in the room, get to know them, and then you can dive into the questions. So we'll have the rooms open for about 10 minutes, and then I'll see you back here. So enjoy yourself, have fun with the people in the room, and have lots and lots of wonderful discussion there. And I'll see you in 10 minutes time. Thank you. So everyone back in the room, and I hope that you had a wonderful discussion. It's just that I assigned about 4 or 5 people into the rooms. It's just that some people, they couldn't go to the breakout rooms because they are already in the translation room. So that's why I was noticing some rooms, there were only 2 people in that. However, you have more opportunity to discuss, hopefully. Now, I would like to invite 1 or 2 of you to share what were the insights that you got through the discussion. If anybody would like to begin. Selena, you have something?
Yes, I do. I was sharing in the group that the way Michael shared just now by going through the step 1 to the step 10 is like leading up to a joyful process. So, but for me, when I'm trying to go through the step, like yeah, it's neat, it's mine to do. I must do that, I should do that, I want to do that, I know that is my passionate and I want to do that. But it's not like a positive towards. I'm more towards like stressful, burning. So I was figuring like what's went wrong and what can I do is like even like resources, I will start to like, is that the first step I didn't, or maybe I should look into that. So, and then it's end.
So when I think about step number 1, identifying these powers and then accepting them and owning them. I think about a little child as children are growing up, whenever they can do the next piece, they go, "Look, Mom, no hands. Look, Mom, I can tie my shoe. Look, I drew this drawing. Look, I made a C. Look." They get so excited about what they're doing. So the core of step number one is get excited about what you can do. Look, I can play chess. I understand how the chess pieces now move. Look, I can mow the yard. I can make straight lines with a lawnmower. I get excited about what I'm doing. I can rake leaves. And every time I rake the leaves, I'm moving my arms, moving my shoulders, making the place look better. If you could get excited about whatever you're doing, I'm reading a book, I'm writing some notes, I'm speaking to someone. The joy is in doing. So when you fully accept and own the powers, even when you're struggling with a problem and you're working on it, if you could own, I'm doing problem solving. I haven't solved it yet, but I'm doing problem solving. This is a power that's developing. Then you can take joy in whatever you're doing. So I go to the gym every single day, and I do the same thing. I'll do a curl. And I try to stay conscious. It's mine to do. It needs to be done. I will do it. It's my passion to stay healthy and have well-being and energy. Every curl helps me to have more energy. So I give myself reasons. And I take joy in doing it. If you don't take joy in doing whatever you're doing, it's going to feel a burden. It's going to feel pressure. It's going to feel stressful. So go back to step one and find the joy of doing whatever you're doing.
So instead, the joy is the step 10. It needs to be like from the beginning onwards, step 1.
Right.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes,
And
Mazuki,
yes.
in our room, we picked up that we wanted to study. And as we are studying, we picked up that the challenge is consistency. We are not doing it every day like Michael does, 30 minutes every day. So that does not become regular. And again, it was an issue of the time. Reading for about an hour, and after an hour, you are so tired, you're not able to go back to go and read. You know, it's like you want to take a long break. So maybe it's a matter of going back and then cut the 1 hour to 30 minutes so that maybe if you want to go back again and read, you still have the mental energy. I don't know what Michael can add to that.
Well, you're right. Yeah. Whatever you do, make sure the quality is high quality. You may not have high quantity. I would rather read for 5 minutes and get inspired, get an idea, get a problem to work on, 5 minutes than an hour. I would rather take 2 months to read a book rather than rush it through in 2 days. So it's not the quantity, it's the quality of what you're doing. And once again, enjoying the process and whatever you're doing for doing it.
Right.
I've been rereading Abraham Maslow's works, and the other day I noticed that I had spent 20 minutes on one paragraph. And that's because as I read that paragraph, I started writing some ideas that it gave me, and then I read it again and got some more ideas again. And so 20 minutes on one paragraph, which was one of 4 paragraphs on that page. And this is the whole idea of reading slower rather than faster, because it's the comprehension and it's the experience that you're getting out of it that is what really counts.
Thank you, Michael. I noticed Sandra just now raising her hand. Sandra, would you like to ask your question or give your comments?
Thank you, Masuki. Michael, it was a question about just understanding responsibility for myself, so as opposed to responsibility for others. So what I find really easy and have extremely high levels of responsibility for is in service of other people. What I'm struggling more with when it comes to my own needs. So for example, exercising, prioritizing my exercise or my health or well-being over the needs of others. And so I just wanted to understand what was the difference, what the tension that creates.
Well, yeah. So this is what we call the responsibility to for distinction. There's an article on the shop, neurosemantics.com, an article, a whole paper on responsibility to for. It's a free report, and I'd recommend reading that responsibility to for. You're never responsible for anybody else. You can be responsible to them if you have a relationship, but you're responsible for yourself. And so if you get that mixed up, you're going to be a caretaker, you're going to be a codependent, you're going to live your life through others and not yourself. And so it needs to be reversed. It's the same principle as when you're in an airplane, put your mask, oxygen mask on first, then on your children. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to have the energy, the vitality, the love to give to others. You're just going to wear yourself out.
Right. Thank you, Michael. And I'd like to invite everyone so that we can move to the next discussion. We have two more questions in the next discussion. These questions are in the document that I sent earlier. So these are the questions for the discussion number 2. How many of the meta levels of feeling and being responsible can you check off? Which ones? Which ones do you need to develop more fully? And the 4th question is, what insight about being and feeling responsible will you take away? So these are the 2 more questions that you'll be discussing in the breakout room. And have fun in the breakout room. Let me recreate the breakout rooms and add, yes. Okay, so I'll see you in 10 minutes time. So enjoy yourself. Hello, Ines, Danielle. You landed in a Portuguese room.
Yes, yes, mainly because it was good for Danielle because she said she will start learning English. So
yes, I'm sorry.
we
I don't
spoke in
speak English.
Portuguese.
I was looking at that. Oh, room 5 turned out to be a Brazil room.
Yeah, Mazuki. I like your smile, Mazuki.
Oh, thank you.
Sometimes when I want to be more humorous, I remember about you.
Thank you, Yes. Yes, we have everyone back in the room. And I hope that you had fun discussing. And I'd like to invite anyone who would like to share or ask questions. However, I would like to sneak in this question. Earlier, Tora put this question in our chat box, and we did not have time to ask this. So this is question from Tora. I wonder if for some, it might feel scary to embrace the must of integrity and the power within it. And therefore, they may distance themselves from really feeling responsible. What are your thoughts or experiences on that? And any tips to work on that with our clients?
Well, that is well stated, and it's a basic human fear that we all have. We fear responsibility. Abraham Maslow said we fear our greatness. So anybody who's had a promotion to a new level of responsibility, they're excited and they're scared. What if I can't handle it? So it's built in. And once again, I would say accept it. So if you're a coach or a trainer and you're called in and somebody says, I want you to make a speech in front of 500 people. What a privilege, what an honor, what excitement, and what fear. It's just built in. Fear and excitement are not opposites. We can transform fear into excitement. And so accept it, own it, take it on, and that would be the way to integrate it so that it becomes the must of integrity rather than the must of pressure.
Thank you, Michael. And another question in the box from Donald. I have too many responsibilities. How do I handle all responsibilities?
This is going to sound paradoxical, but the responsibility you need to take is to limit your responsibilities, your actions. And so we did that in our little room just now. It needs to be done. I need to limit the amount of things I'm giving myself to every day because it's wearing me out. It's too much. It needs to be done. It's mine to do. It's mine to limit it. I will limit it. I must limit it. I want to limit it. I make the decision to limit it. It's ecological for me. And so if you want to mess up your life, have too many things to do. So it's a hard decision, but it's a decision for the ecology of your system to limit it to a number of things that you can do good quality with. So if any of the things you're doing suffers quality, then it's too many things, so start limiting it. And it's an occupational hazard of modern society and modern cultures. Too many things are knocking on our door, wanting our attention. You have to say no.
Thank you, Michael. And anyone else has got any questions or comments that you would like to bring to the main group? Michael, you mentioned some about the development of the cognitive development of people. I'm meaning to say it is at about the teenage years that they begin to build that sense of responsibility. When you mentioned that, the thing that struck me was I was quite dumbfounded when at the age of 6, my eldest granddaughter, whom I call Grasshopper, went up to her mama and said, Mama, can I do the laundry from A to Z? So what's your comment on that?
Yeah. I think that's a good illustration of the fact that we are made to want to take responsibilities. We're made to do that. And then we get other things that interfere with it. We discount, we allow fear to pervade, we try to do too many things. And so then we kill this drive to be and feel responsible as persons. But it's built into us. We want to do the next step. And I now do this.
I have a comment there. At that point, if her mother chose to have her do it and help her learn to go through the steps of doing the laundry, she would have been supporting this kind of thinking and this way of developing. Whereas if she had said, no, you're too young, you can't do that, she would be breaking the mold and interfering in the child's development.
Yeah. I can I can attest to that. She's 15 now, and she's been doing the laundry since she was 6.
Yay!
She's come to the extent that if she sees her mama doing the laundry, say, Mama, stop. Let me do that. Okay, I see Flo raising her hand, so go ahead, Flo.
Yes, there's a question from the Spanish speakers. Do the steps have to be followed in that same order, or can you jump from one to another?
Yeah, you can jump from one to the other. It's not particularly in a sequential order. So yeah. You might need to check the ecology before you do the must of integrity.
Thank you. Okay, so we are coming up to 20 minutes to the next hour already. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for being here. And Michael, you've shared what I call tremendous insights into it. So before we end, Michael, may we have some final words from you regarding this topic?
So I hope everybody sees what a deep dive we've made into responsibility. It's much deeper, much higher, much layered than many people suspect. And being and feeling responsible is such a high level of aspiration that is a step of self-actualization. So in just a moment, I'd like to read a final quotation from Abraham Maslow. But imagine if all of us were being and feeling responsible for the promotion of neurosemantics or meta coaching in our institutes. How much power that would give all of us as a community to feel and be responsible in a healthy, exciting, life-enhancing way. Abraham Maslow said, if you deliberately plan to be less than you're capable of being, he says, then I warn you, you will be deeply unhappy for the rest of your life. You will be evading your capacities, your responsibilities. So let's turn that around. If you deliberately plan to be everything you can be, then you will be happy for the rest of your life because you'll be fulfilling your capacities, your responsibilities. So to your happiness for the rest of your life as a highly joyful, responsible person who's letting it allow you to become the best person you can become.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate that. And let's give Michael a really big hand. And just a couple of announcements before we close the room. The first announcement is regarding the next NeuroSemantics Wisdom. That will be on the 13th of April. So mark your calendar, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the session on the April, on the 13th of April. Then next announcement is regarding the NSTT. This will be on the 18th of May. So that's only April, only 2 months away. So get ready for a wonderful NSTT. And I'd like to welcome everyone who's ready to join us for this NSTT. And so coming to the end of the session, before we end, I'd just like to take a few moments for the picture taking. So let's spruce ourselves up, apply your makeup or whatever that you need to apply. Right, and I have two screens to take. So first screen, ready or not? 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, we've got that first one. And the second screen, ready? 3, 2, 1, smile. Oh, thank you very much. I love your smile, Christian. So, with that, I would like to say thank you for your presence and participation. Today, it's almost 1¾ hour. We've been here, so give yourself a big hand. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your being here. And I look forward to meeting all of you in our next meeting. I'm Marzuki. I'm a NeuroSemantics trainer and mental coach, and I wish you an exceptional quality of life filled with happiness, creativity, and fulfillment. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye. Take care. Love you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.